Hey, what's up, guys? How's it going? Hopefully you're having a phenomenal day. Darth Toad says hi too, but she's a little busy right now, so we won't bother her too much. But maybe you're like me. Horizon Forbidden West just came out recently, and I had never played Horizon Zero Dawn before. Maybe you're like me. Maybe you never really got a great understanding of it, or maybe, I don't know, maybe you're just checking this out because you enjoy watching my content. I don't understand why, but I'm not going to try to make you realize something you probably shouldn't. So something in Horizon Zero Dawn that I didn't play a whole lot with until I got closer to the end game were your weapon modifications. And boy, can I tell you, they make a huge difference in the game. So today we are going to go over the best way to mod every weapon for different situations in Horizon Zero Dawn. I don't know, I could take time to remind you to like, subscribe. Oh wait, I just did that. So let's just go ahead and get started, shall we? Now, before we get started with this, there are three major tips that I want to share with you about modifications. Number one, I'm not going to tell you in what order you need to unlock your skills, or that should be based on your gameplay style and what you value in the game. But in terms of modifications, down the Forager path, the Tinkerer skill is going to be essential, especially towards the late game, whenever you start getting really good mods and you don't want to throw it on a weapon and then switch it out and then it's gone forever whenever you remove it. So very important that at some point you get that Tinkerer skill because it is super important for modifying weapons and armor. Second, it's important to know that modifications have a primary effect, but then they also have a secondary effect and sometimes a tertiary effect. And it's very important that you cannot give a weapon abilities that it would not have or effects it would not have by a modification. So if you're looking at one of the hunter bows, those cannot do, say, frost damage or shock damage. So if you apply a coil to it that gives maybe flame damage and shock damage, the shock damage is totally wasted. So keep that in mind, that you are not going to be able to give brand new effects to weapons by having a secondary effect or tertiary effect. That's not how it works. The third thing, which you probably already know, is that you can switch out mods in combat, which is another reason why I say it's very nice to have that Tinkerer skill. And it may seem obvious, you know, why are you bringing this up? Because there are situations where it's very helpful to have one set of mods on within the same battle against the same, enemy, and then switch them out. For example, if you're fighting a Stormbird, there's probably a point in the battle when you are trying to tear all of the pieces off of the Stormbird, and then there is a point where you're going to be more focused on dealing damage to the Stormbird, so it would make sense to apply different mods during different points of the battle. And it's something that, again, it sounds obvious, but it's something that maybe when you're in the heat of battle, you don't think about, and it is a tactic that you really should keep I was gonna say in the back of your mind, in the front of your mind, whenever you're in these battles. Now, before we get started, there's one clarification that I want to make, and that is that these are my opinions. This is based on how I play the game, and I recognize that not everyone is going to play the game the same way that I do. So if you have other opinions, please share them down in the comments below, because maybe other people play like you and not necessarily like me, so my opinions don't necessarily translate to everyone else's game. One example of that is I am probably not going to recommend a handling coil at all during this entire list, and that's not because I don't find there to be any value in the coil. It's just because the way that I play the game, I prefer to deal more damage or to focus on the other aspects of the bow rather than shooting it really fast. And that is just me personally in the way that I choose to play the game. It's if you value handling and being able to fire your bow very quickly, then you should absolutely do it. So it's not saying don't do these things, or, if I say to focus on one aspect, that doesn't mean there is no reason to focus on a different aspect. It's just how I play the game, and it's what's worked out well for me. And so I just wanted to share that with you. So first off, let's talk about the hunter bow. And for this one, you can use damage, tear, fire, or handling. Again, I personally don't do a whole lot with handling unless I just really don't have anything else that's that great, or if it has a really good secondary or tertiary effect. But for me personally, this bow is very situational in how you want to mod it. For example, if you're going up against enemies where you're going to be doing a lot with fire arrows, then you are going to want to have a lot of fire modifications on it. I personally honestly swap through the damage and the fire depending on the type of enemy I'm going up against. I will put tear on the hunter bow if I feel like I need it, but honestly, that's what my Sharpshot Bow is for, and that's what my tear blaster is for. I don't necessarily need to do a lot of tear damage with my hunter bow. So I'm going to focus more on damage, on fire. I might switch them out in the middle of a battle. It depends on what the situation calls for, but those are my two recommendations for the hunter bow. Next, we have the Sharpshot Bow that is compatible with damage, tear, and handling. Personally, again, I am going to cycle through the tear and the damage. I don't do a whole lot with handling. Not to say that you shouldn't. It is a very slow bow to fire, so it does make sense if you wanted to use handling. That's just not how I necessarily use the bow. But honestly, I would recommend using some tear coils on it whenever you're going to be using your tear blast arrows, and then whenever you've torn off whatever you need to, or all of the armor that you need to tear off, I would switch to your damage coils for your normal attacks. 3 damage coils on a Sharpshot Bow with 3 arrows in the sling is going to deal an insane amount of damage, and I am a huge fan of doing that combo. So I would use either Tear if you're using Tear Blast, or I would use Damage if you're using just normal damage arrows. Next up is the Warbow, which is compatible with Freeze, Corruption, and Shock. Now, personally, this, hopefully makes sense, is I would just put on whatever coils you need for the situation. If you're fighting an enemy that is weak up against Corruption, use Corruption coils. Shock, use Shock coils, etc., etc. A lot of people like to just use Freeze coils on it if you don't want to micromanage, because freezing enemies is real nice because they can't move, and then you get to just basically have your way with them. And it is quite a bit of fun. But if you do want to micromanage a little bit, I would just put the coils on for the element that the enemy you're attacking is weak against. And that's really, again, not a huge fan of the handling, but if you do, go for it. All right, so next, let's talk about the Tripcaster. I'm going to be completely honest. I did not find a whole lot of use out of this weapon in the game. However, I'm not gonna lie to you. I am not a From Software fan. I am not someone that hates my life and wants, this insane challenge in the game. So I didn't play it on like the insanity difficulty mode. I can see a use for the Tripcaster. If you're playing hard and you need to set up a lot of traps to deal damage before, the battle really begins. And that makes sense. And for that reason, since I didn't use it a whole lot, I don't have a lot of really strong recommendations. Again, I'm not a huge fan of handling, because usually whenever I did use the Tripcaster, it was before the battle started. After the battle started, I wasn't trying to set traps anymore, because if I was taking the time to do that, I was probably getting attacked. So handling, not super important. So for me, I would, again, just throw on either damage, fire, or shock, depending on what it is that you are trying to attack and what your purpose that you're trying to achieve with the Tripcaster. Again, not my favorite weapon. I got very little use out of it, but if you love the Tripcaster, if you like setting traps, if you like being that sneaky guy, just think about that whenever you're using it. All right, the Ropecaster. Oh, I love it. I love the Ropecaster so much. You can do Tear and you can do handling. And let me tell you something. Tear that baby up. I love 3 Tear coils on that thing, and you can take down like a Thunderjaw in like 3 hits with it. I absolutely love the Ropecaster. It is so nice. Hey guys, Future Chat here. So I did have some poor information for you that I caught in editing that I wanted to add in here. Tear does not actually affect how quickly you can tie down enemies. That is based off of the tier of Ropecaster you have. However, I do still stand by my recommendation for Tear on it, because if you hit pieces of it with armor, that will still apply Tear damage to the armor and help pull the armor off, specifically since I like to use the Blast Sling with it, ripping off the armor, deal more damage. So wanted to go ahead and correct that, but also still stand by why I use the Tear, just not necessarily for the same reason. Now, back to your regular scheduled programming. For balancing out battles whenever you were just surrounded, there are a ton of different machines attacking you. Just Ropecast a bunch of them down, and then you can, gather yourself, take your time, and that Tear is going to allow you to rope them a lot faster. So I'm a big fan of Tear on the Ropecaster. And if you haven't started using the Ropecaster yet, you should, because it straight up, like, I'm not gonna say it breaks the game, but it makes it so much easier. If you are having trouble with the combat as well, Ropecaster, it's your best friend. All right, next let's talk about the regular Sling. And for that one, again, you're gonna have your fire, your freezing, and your shock, and handling, I know. Again, with this one, I would either stick to freeze so that you can freeze people, or again, micromanagement and put on the coils that make sense for the weaknesses of your enemies. Very much like the Warbow. So I don't know, I'm not gonna waste your guys' time. That's how it is, or at least my opinion, I should say. All right, the Blast Sling, damage and handling, and I'm just gonna say it, damage, lots and lots and lots of damage, and boy, can this thing just wreck lives. Ropecaster plus Blast Sling, oh boy, just Ropecast that bad boy down, get the sticky bombs and just throw them on there, and it's good night. I mean, I love the Blast Sling, and just get all that juicy damage on there, and it's phenomenal. So Blast Sling, damage out the wazoo is my humblest of opinions. All right, last up is the Rattler, and that is going to have damage, tear, shock, freezing, and handling. And let me tell you something. Personally, for me, I'm going to go all in on damage. Again, freeze or shock, depending on if you're in the right situation, you have the enemies that you need to use that on, go for it. Personally though, for the Rattler, I want all of the damage. The handling I think is not necessary because it's already super fast at firing. I think the handling is extraneous if you were to do that, but damage and just wreck people's lives with that bad boy. You could throw tear on there as well, but I just feel like you have other better options for tear with the tear blast arrows or the tear blaster. What is the name of the weapon again? I've even forgotten. Yeah, the Tear Blaster. That's what it's called. Tear Blaster arrows, or Tear Blast arrows, whatever they're called. That's what I'm going to use for Tear, so I'm not going to use that for the Rattler. So unless you like, just don't really have any other better mods to put on it, go with Tear, but damage is my personal preference. And then, you know, elements if you want to, again, micromanage. But for me, the Rattler is all about the damage, baby. All right, guys, I tried to keep it short and sweet. So there you go. That is my set of recommendations for how you should mod all of the different weapons in Horizon Zero Dawn. Did you find this helpful? If you did, please let me know down in the comments below. And if you have any disagreements, if you find that a different set of mods makes more sense for your playstyle, let everyone else know, because there's probably someone out there. There's likely someone out there that plays the game the way you do as well. If you've made it this far in the video, go ahead and hit the like button. You liked it if you're around this far, right? I mean, if you don't, hit the dislike button. That works too. But if you did hit the like button, it's the subscribe button's right next to it, and so is that bell. Hit both of those too, so you get notifications for any new videos and live streams. And we'll talk to you guys in a later video. And where's she at? Darth Doge says goodbye too. Bye, guys.